Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave, on behalf of every father and every mother who waits for freedom, on behalf of our warriors, and paves the way for a new history.
Hello, welcome to Tochnyi Weekly. We have a great broadcast for you today, but first I just wanted to make a little announcement, which is, of course, you probably have heard that Elon Musk, he needs money. His investments in Twitter not paying off. I don't know. The things are not looking great. So he's shaking down poor innocent Ukrainian developer Restream, and as a result, we used to be able to broadcast on Twitter for free, and we don't feel like paying Elon Musk directly. So now we don't broadcast on Twitter anymore. So it's a bummer, but we do broadcast on YouTube. YouTube is very nice. They don't charge us to broadcast on their platform like crazy billionaires do. So if you guys could just kind of spread the word, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, promote our stuff on like other social media. Just bring people here because this is where we're able to do our content without Elon Musk demanding money or interfering with our content in weird ways. So yeah, thanks everyone for showing up. Hi chat, we definitely appreciate you guys. So thanks for your support, and yeah, we'll go ahead and get on with the broadcast. So of course, thanks to our panel for showing up. We got Erland, of course, on vacation this week, but we will still have my news segment, so I'll be presenting the news shortly. That'll be followed by a report from German aid to Ukraine. Then we're going to discuss an article that Colby published for The Insider, and that'll finally be closed out. We'll have maybe Daniela might come, so we'll see about that, and then we'll do some Q&A. So yeah, without any further delay, I'll go ahead and jump into the news. I'm always tempted to do like what Philip DeFranco says and go, like, let's get right into it. I guess I just did do it. Firefighters in southern Russia's Rostov region are battling a large fire at an oil storage site in Prolatarsk, which began 2 days after a Ukrainian drone strike. The blaze started early Sunday when Russian air defense systems intercepted Ukrainian drones. Ukraine's military claimed responsibility, stating that their drones targeted the Kavkaz oil and petroleum storage facility. On Tuesday, local media released footage showing thick black smoke over Prolatarsk. According to Prolatarsk district head, Valery Gornik, the fire has spread across 10,000 square meters, and a total of 520 firefighters and 4 aircraft have been deployed to manage the situation. Gornich noted that extreme heat is preventing fire trucks from getting closer, and as of Tuesday morning, 20 out of 74 fuel tanks were still ablaze. I will also mention that there was a discussion of a casualty report. Like, I haven't been keeping track of how this has developed since Tuesday, but it was somewhere around 48 Russian firefighters had been injured trying to put this thing out. And I thought that had to be some kind of a mistake, but it's not. So this is like one of the worst fires, I think, in Russia, to my knowledge, that has happened as a result of the this whole situation. So yeah, get out of Ukraine, guys, if you don't want this going on. Next item. During the Ocheret special operation, which is like reeds, like river reeds, the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine successfully recruited a Russian soldier who carried out an attack on a Stormzy headquarters. The DIU's press service reported that the soldier, who goes by the call sign Silver, defected to Ukraine with the help of the I Want to Live project and the Freedom of Russia Legion. So I couldn't show footage of what he actually did because it's on YouTube. So if you want to, you can look it up. There's something called like The Arrow or something has the footage on YouTube. But this is the reenactment of his his heroic act. At an opportune moment, Silver threw a grenade into a ventilation shaft leading to the basement of the Russian unit's headquarters, where the commander and other officers were sleeping. The grenade exploded next to the commander's bed in a basement where 15 people were present. After the attack, Silver followed a prearranged escape route and crossed into Ukrainian-controlled territory. I should mention not all of them were sleeping in the bed. There's guys like getting ready with it was an active military site. Anyway, in addition to carrying out the attack, the soldier provided the DIU with valuable intelligence regarding the enemy's location, numbers, and strategic plans in a specific frontline area. Silver, who is a Russian drone operator, contacted the Freedom of Russia Legion in the winter of 2024. He basically said, like, my unit's doing a bunch of war crimes. I don't like being here. And he said that he was a reconnaissance guy. He never killed Ukrainian soldiers. I don't know. They all say that, but he has joined the Freedom of Russia Legion, and he said he wants to overthrow Putin's regime. And he, in an earlier operation, I don't know. That's pretty much it for that. So just kind of a crazy story. I just wanted to report on that. I don't know how significant it is, but he threw a grenade into. Anyway, the third bridge over the same river in Russia's Kursk region has been damaged due to shelling by Ukrainian defense forces. Satellite images shared by analyst MT Anderson on his Twitter account showed the bridge near the region of Karij in Glushkovsky in Kursk. The images, dated August 20th, reveal that while the bridge is not completely destroyed, the damage makes the transportation of heavy equipment and machinery risky. High-resolution images show visible damage across the structure of the bridge. News of the bridge's damage first emerged on August 19th when the Russian propagandist Vladimir Romanov reported on his Telegram channel that the bridge had been destroyed. He was like, I just crossed the bridge and they just blew it up. It's a weird coincidence, but the bridge, which located in the Kursk Oblast along with the same river, is one of the 3 road bridges in the area targeted by Ukrainian forces. The first bridge near the village of Glushkovo was destroyed on August 16th. The second was near the village of Zvanoye, which was hit on August 18th, and that rendered it unusable for heavy equipment transport. These attacks on the bridges are likely intended to disrupt supply routes for the Russian border group between the village of Tochnyi and the Russian-controlled area. And I mentioned Tochnyi in my reports last week. Next item. On August 24th, Ukraine's military intelligence agency, HUR, launched a significant cyber attack on Russian internet providers. It basically seems like major cyber attacks on Russian stuff happening about once a week now, disrupting operations across multiple industrial facilities in Russia. According to a military intelligence source, the attack impacted 33 servers and 283 office computers at the facilities, took down 21 websites, and destroyed 15 cloud and file storage systems. Ukrainian hackers also left pro-Ukraine messages on the compromised platforms. Russian users experienced problems with several digital service providers, including Rostelecom, MTC, Beeline, and Yandex. The affected platforms are believed to support and finance Russia's military efforts against Ukraine. The attack also targeted the network of infrastructure of factories and companies that supply equipment to Russian law enforcement, as well as components for aircraft and helicopters, hardware, software servers, and processors. And I should also mention there was another hack on Russian TV services, and they showed stuff from the Kursk situation. So next item. On the night of August 24th, a drone attack in Russia's Voronezh Oblast led to a fire and the detonation of explosive objects. The governor of the region, Gusev, reported that Russian air defense units intercepted and destroyed several unmanned aerial vehicles, but that there was collateral damage and that triggered explosions at an unspecified location. The Russian Telegram channel Astra suggested that the explosion occurred at an ammunition depot in Ostrogozhsk. No casualties have been reported, and emergency services have been called to the site. Ukrainian forces previously struck military airfields, oil refineries, and ammunition depots in Voronezh. There was a similar incident on July 7th where an ammunition depot was hit in the region, although they didn't specify. We didn't learn many specifics about that attack. Ukraine's Navy confirmed the sinking of a Russian ferry named the Conro Trader at the Kavkaz port in Russia's Krasnodar Krai on August 22nd. Dmytro Platenchuk, a spokesman for the Ukrainian Navy, stated in an interview with Radio Free Europe on August 23rd that the vessel was transporting fuel and weapons to Russian forces, making it a legitimate military target. Platenchuk didn't disclose the specifics of the weapons that were used to sink the vessel. The Kavkaz port, located on the Chushka Spit in the Kerch Strait, is one of Russia's largest passenger ports and primarily serves as a Kerch ferry crossing into Russian-occupied Crimea. Photos and videos show on August 22nd smoke rising over the Taman Peninsula in Krasnodar Krai, indicating aftermath of an attack. Local authorities confirmed the ferry sinking after the strike, noting that it had fuel aboard at the time. And this is part of a broader pattern of Ukrainian attacks on the ferry crossings because, as was mentioned by Budanov, there's a situation where they're relying less on the Kerch Bridge and more on the ferries to transport military stuff. So, it makes sense that they would start sinking the ferries. Ukraine launched a significant drone attack on Moscow and other Russian regions, deploying about 50 drones in what Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin described as one of the largest attacks on the city to date. The attack took place on August 20th through 21st and was widely shared on social media. According to Ukraine's military intelligence chief, Budanov, the drones targeted a signals intelligence center in the Podolsk region of Moscow's outskirts and the nearby Ostafyevo airport. The Milarovo military air base in Rostov Oblast is located about 850 kilometers south of Moscow and was also targeted. The defense ministry claimed that 45 of the drones were downed in the attack, including 11 in Moscow Oblast, and that the extent of the damage remains unclear. That was what Budanov said, that he's not sure how much damage it did. And he also mentioned that the Ostafyevo airport was a deceptive target, meaning that I think he means that it was a decoy target, but I'm not sure. He said it primarily serves as transport aviation. President Volodymyr Zelensky announced the successful deployment of Ukraine's new missile drone weapon system named Palanitsia against Russian military targets. The weapon is symbolically named after a traditional Ukrainian bread that is difficult for non-Ukrainians to pronounce. There's probably some upset Ukrainians, I'm sorry. It represents a new class of technology available in Ukraine's arsenal. During Independence Day celebrations, Zelensky highlighted the significance of the Palanitsia system, although they didn't provide specific details about the capabilities. He confirmed that the system had successfully struck enemy positions, describing it as a new method of retaliating against Russian aggression. And he emphasized that Russia will face difficulty countering the weapon. The introduction is something that they announced in terms of enhancing their drone capabilities. And they've managed to reach the milestone they announced in late May of their Million Drone Initiative. So yeah, things going pretty well on the strategic weapons front. So that's it for operational news. Up next, I will do economy stuff. U.S. President Joe Biden recently spoke with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and reaffirmed America's strong support for Ukraine, announcing a new military aid package ahead of Ukraine's Independence Day. The U.S. Does support Ukraine's right to strike across the border, but is still resistant to using U.S.-supplied ATACMS missiles for deep strikes inside Russia. We'll talk about that a little more later. On August 23rd, the U.S. Treasury Department imposed sanctions on over 100 individuals and legal entities across 16 jurisdictions for circumventing Western sanctions on Russia. The new sanctions target more than a dozen international networks involved in weapons procurement for Russia. Among those sanctioned is Italian citizen Giulio Sfoglietti, who is identified as overseeing a network that facilitated Russian weapon purchases in Turkey. Another network was found to be importing components for a sanctioned Russian company known as Promtech through businesses in Turkey, France, and Hong Kong. Noticing a weird pattern there. The U.S. Treasury also uncovered networks in Switzerland and Liechtenstein that allowed Russian oligarchs to hide their involvement in Western companies through trust funds, and they can continue to buy semiconductors through these methods. Italian machine tool manufacturer Fagima was sanctioned for its collaboration with Russian procurement agent, and it's now on a U.S. blacklist. The sanctions also include companies from the United Arab Emirates and several Chinese companies. and as well as a network of firms that Russia set up to support hackers. And those hackers were sanctioned in 2018, but they sanctioned firms associated with them. The Danish government has announced a new aid package valued at approximately 783 million Danish kroner, or 116 million US dollars, to support Ukraine's military needs. The package is designed to address both immediate and long term defense. The majority of the funds will be used to purchase new military equipment from Ukraine's defense industry and international partners. Danish Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen stated that the 20th military aid package was developed based on Ukraine's specific needs, and he stressed the importance of Denmark's continued support. An important component of the aid package is the allocation of around a little under half to increase the industrial pool to strengthen Ukraine's defense industry, and 100 million Danish kroner, so I don't know how much that is, sorry, will be directed towards financing purchases through Ukrainian defense enterprises. Norway has granted the Nordics, pulling weight this week, has granted Ukraine a license to develop 155 millimeter artillery shells and committed to funding the project. The agreement was signed between NAMO, the Norwegian Defense Corporation, and a Ukrainian defense company, which allows for the production of the shells at Norway's expense. The Norwegian Defense Minister Bjorn Allerid Gram emphasized that the collaboration will enable faster supply of ammunition to Ukrainian forces, as Norway contributes by transferring ammunition from its own stocks and directly from the industry. Norwegian Foreign Minister Espen Barth Eide highlighted the importance of Norway's continued support for Ukraine's defense, noting its significance for both Ukrainian and Norwegian security. This is what Erland gets for not being here. I'm not only going to weigh in on Norwegian matters, I'm going to pronounce the names of all of his officials wrong. Additionally, Ukraine and Norway have extended their agreement on the liberalization of freight transport until June 2025. The extension allows for implementation of bilateral transit cooperation between the two countries without the need for permits. And they also successfully negotiated with Norway to increase the number of permits for transportation to third countries by 40%. So the agreement is part of a broader effort to facilitate trade and transportation between Ukraine and Norway. So yeah, lots of great agreements signed between Ukraine and Norway this week. Lastly, for European aid, the Netherlands will acquire 51 mobile radars for Ukraine. The delivery is expected in the fourth quarter of 2024, and they're supplied by the Dutch company Robin Radar, and they're designed to monitor the environment to detect drone movements at high speeds. Their mobility ensures continuous detection of enemy drones, enabling effective countermeasures. Next item. This is, I guess that was all the economy stuff. This is like my one international relations or affairs item this week. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi agreed to hold a meeting of the joint Ukrainian-Indian Working Group on military technical cooperation. Man, I should have prepared myself for how hard that sentence was going to go. Modi's visit to Kyiv marks the first time an Indian prime minister has visited Ukraine since the establishment of diplomatic relations 30 years ago. The joint working group was established in 2012 under the Defense Cooperation Agreement, and they held their first meeting in Kyiv in 2018, with plans for a second meeting to be organized in India soon. The two leaders committed to strengthening defense ties between the countries, focusing on cooperation in manufacturing and exploring new areas of collaboration. Following their discussions, 4 agreements were signed. Modi's visit to Ukraine came just weeks after a trip to Moscow, where he met with Russian President Vladimir Putin. This visit included a controversial embrace between the two leaders shortly after a Russian attack on a children's hospital in Kyiv, and that drew widespread criticism. Despite India's longstanding alliance with Russia, I don't know, alliance is maybe a strong word, New Delhi has maintained close economic and diplomatic ties with Moscow, and bilateral trade has reached record levels in 2023. In addition to the defense cooperation, Ukraine and India signed a memorandum of understanding on India's humanitarian grant aid for community development in Ukraine. The memorandum was signed by the Deputy Prime Minister and India's Foreign Minister, and it sets the framework for expanding economic and technical cooperation between the two nations. Furthermore, the government signed an agreement to enhance cooperation in agriculture and the food industry. The agreement was aimed to foster collaboration in agricultural research, crop production, seed certification, and food safety. and it covers a wide array of agricultural products, joint ventures, cooperation in aquaculture and fisheries. And the agreements, or this agreement in particular, is effective immediately and is set to remain in force for 5 years. So, yeah, lots of major agreements between Ukraine and India. There's also rumors that maybe Modi passed some kind of a message from Putin. I don't know if any of that's credible or not. And then the one other thing was, I should just mention, was like the foreign minister. The whole time, it seemed like Modi's job was to be really nice to Ukraine during this whole thing, and the foreign minister's job was to like keep Russia as not mad as possible. So he was like tweeting out the whole time like stuff to like make Russia less mad. So yeah, it was a weird kind of, India's clearly walking a line in their like stance here, but I think clearly positive to see some cooperation between the two countries. So. Lastly, I guess it's like just various domestic news in Ukraine and Russia. So this week marks the celebration of Ukrainian Independence Day on August 24th, as well as Ukrainian Flag Day on August 23rd. Independence Day, I think, is kind of clear what it is. The holiday commemorating Ukraine's statehood and national symbols, known as Flag Day, was established by a presidential decree on August 23rd, 2004. In 2009, it was amended to include an annual official flag-raising ceremony across the country. The blue and yellow colors of Ukraine's flag have a history spanning over 1,000 years, dating back to the era of the Kievan Rus and the Kingdom of Galicia-Volhynia. During the 1848 European revolutions, known as the Springtime of Nations, the blue and yellow flag was adopted as the symbol of Ukrainian people, as it was first raised in the Lviv town hall in June 1848. The flag was later officially recognized with the proclamation of the Ukraine People's Republic. During Soviet times, the red flag with the sickle and hammer dominated, and displaying the blue and yellow flag was met with severe punishment. In modern Ukraine, the blue and yellow flag was officially hoisted for the first time above the Stry town hall on March 14, 1990, and later over Kyiv City Hall on July 24, 1990. In 1991, a group of members of parliament brought the flag to a parliamentary session hall, and on September 4th, it was raised over the parliamentary building for the first time. The Verkhovna Rada, Ukraine's parliament, has ratified the Rome Statute on the International Criminal Court with the support of 281 members of parliament. Prior to the vote, the General Staff and Ukrainian Defense Intelligence Chief sent letters backing the decision. President Volodymyr Zelensky submitted the necessary bills to Parliament on the 15th of August. Ukraine's ratification signifies full accession into the International Criminal Court, although it comes with a declaration stating that for 7 years, Ukraine will not recognize their jurisdiction over their own nationals for crimes under Article 8 of the Rome Statute. This raises some questions because Ukraine has already allowed the ICC to investigate some crimes committed on their own territory. That's what Article 8 is about. So yeah, it's a little bit confusing. Like they have already agreed to this in some circumstances, so it sounds like they're just reserving the right in some circumstances. I don't know. Ukraine is also planning to accede to the updated ICC statute, which includes Article 8, and the ratification will eventually, that'll happen like later. Ukraine has announced the release of 115 servicemen as well, who were conscripts captured during the initial stages of Russia's assault. Among them were 50 soldiers who had been held captive after being seized from the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol. So that occurred this week. There was a prisoner exchange between Russia and Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry reported that 115 Russian soldiers who had been captured in the Kursk region during a surprise offensive by Ukrainian forces were part of the exchange. The Russian soldiers are in Belarus awaiting transfer. So yeah, just kind of an interesting point that they're from the Kursk offensive. The president of Ukraine noted that the UAE had once again mediated the exchange and that it's the 55th exchange that they've overseen since the full-scale invasion. And this is my last Ukraine item for the week, I believe. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has signed a law regulating religious organizations with leadership ties to Russia. The law was submitted for his signature on the 23rd of August and signed the following day. On the 20th, Ukraine's parliament passed the bill on the second reading, and this prohibits the operation of religious organizations linked to Russia. The law is intended to counter the spread of the Ruski Mir, or Russian world ideology, which has been promoted by the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, as it's called. The ideology envisions Ukraine as part of a, quote, holy Rus and denies Ukraine's independence, posing a threat to national security. The law seeks to prevent the activities of churches controlled by Russia, which is currently engaged in aggression against Ukraine. An expert commission established by the State Service of Ukraine for Ethnopolitics and Freedom of Conscience will investigate religious organizations suspected of cooperating with the Russian Orthodox Church. If the commission identifies violations, they will order the church to address the issue. Under the new law, religious organizations will have 9 months to sever ties with Russia after the commission's findings. If they fail to do so, the state will initiate a lawsuit against any legal entities involved, and the court will have the authority to impose a ban on the institution. This law is designed to regulate religious institutions and prevent those with connections to Russia from operating. It outlines procedures for investigation and potential legal action against entities suspected of maintaining ties to the Russian Orthodox Church. And my last item for this week, inmates at the IK-19 prison of Russia's Volgograd region took several prison employees hostage on Friday, according to the Russian Federal Penitentiary Service. The incident occurred during a disciplinary commission meeting where inmates seized the staff members. Efforts to rescue the hostages are ongoing, and they have confirmed that injuries have occurred, although specific details haven't been provided. Reports from a Russian state news agency citing emergency services indicate that one person has been killed, allegedly an on-duty employee who resisted the attackers. Telegram channel later reported that at least 3 people had been killed, while Interfax stated that 3 individuals are in intensive care, so a little unclear. The exact number of hostages remains unclear. It's reported that the prison's chief, Andrei Devyatinov, and his deputy were among those taken hostage in the incident. Reportedly, he escaped but was injured in the escape and is in intensive care. The attackers allegedly handed him over after the escape attempt because he was probably dying. The preliminary report suggests that 3 or 4 inmates are involved in the incident, with some sources linking them to ISIS, similar to the inmates who took hostages in the Rostov-on-Don prison in June. The attackers reportedly demanded $2 million in a helicopter, although I should mention that there's a video circulating on Telegram that they have an ISIS flag. It's not clear which of these videos are real, but basically that video denies that they want $2 million in a helicopter. They basically say this is revenge. This isn't about getting money in a helicopter. And then riot police are present on the scene, and there's an imam who is attempting to start negotiations with the hostage takers. The Russian president has been briefed on the situation and is receiving updates. The Russian Investigative Committee have opened a criminal case, that's about that. So things going great in Russia as usual. I think that's pretty much it for the news this week. I wanted to mention there's kind of 2 things that I'll just say real quick, and we can maybe talk about them later if you guys want in the Q&A. Of course, there's the arrest of the guy who runs Telegram. I think that's a pretty huge deal. It's kind of a big deal just for how the whole information economy of the Ukraine war works. So we can maybe discuss that a little later. The other one is the U.S. opened an investigation into people involved in Russian media and influence operations. Basically, running up to the election, it's looking like they're going to be doing some stuff. So those are kind of the 2 stories I felt like I couldn't really squeeze in this week. There's just too much. So we'll maybe talk about that later if you guys are interested. So I'll go ahead and turn it over now to Germany to Ukraine. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, hello guys. First of all, thank you very much for waiting. I'm the reason why the stream started half an hour late. My wonderful mother had birthday today, or she still has, so I came a little bit late and we had to reschedule the whole stream since Erland isn't here. But let's go on. As always, I will now present the most important news from Germany regarding Ukraine. And we start this week's update with the latest deliveries of military aid, which the German government made public on Monday. In the past 3 weeks, Germany has delivered the following equipment to Ukraine: 2 Iris-T SLS launchers, 10 Sonderbot 5 USVs, 26 Vector UAVs, 1 Bergepanzer 2 armored recovery vehicles, 6 armored high mobility engineer excavators. These are the vehicles you see on the image. 50 CR308 rifles, 10 HLR 338 precision rifles, 700 MK 556 assault rifles, 14,155 shells, material for explosive ordnance disposal, and 55,000 first aid kits. And as the second and also as the last item of this week, the German Luftwaffe has made public on Saturday that they are starting with the fourth training of Ukrainian soldiers on the Patriot air defense system. As Germany hasn't pledged an additional fire unit yet, at least, I strongly assume that Germany is taking over the training for another country which has pledged a fire unit to Ukraine, so Romania or the Netherlands. I strongly assume that the US has enough capabilities to train personnel their own, so it's either one of these two. Yeah, and that's all I had for this week. Yeah, back to you, Joseph.
Yeah, thanks. So I guess we're now, we want to talk about Colby's article. So Colby, of course, the article can be found on the Insider. I posted the link in the YouTube chat. I'll maybe do it one more time real quick.
I can also like go for a ticker, which goes through
yeah.
from right to left if you want to.
Sure. Yeah. So I just wanted to touch base with Colby. I think it's a good article. So Colby, I can either go through it with you kind of in sort of an outline, or if you want to summarize it, it's kind of up to you, man.
Sure. So I mean, in brief, basically the article is about sort of the larger grand strategic implications of the Kursk operation. Obviously, it's still unfolding. So in my view, at least, I didn't want to write too much about that aspect of the tactics and the operation itself because it is still unfolding. So, and there's people that are much better placed to talk about that. Obviously, if you're really interested in what's the minutiae of what's happening on the ground every day, obviously our colleague Andrew Perpetua, has his map and is always providing really good commentary on what he's seeing happen on the ground. So I wanted to take a different view because even though it is still unfolding, it was evident pretty much right away that it was pretty significant operation, just the fact that they were launching it to begin with. But there's a lot of implications on the political side. And I guess my main thesis is that Ukraine has really both outmaneuvered the Russians and the United States at the same time here, because they've been very frustrated with the scale of support that they've been getting from the United States and the restrictions that President Biden has been placing on the way that they can use weapons donated to them. And they're really sort of shifting the Overton window, basically, is how I would put it with this operation. So hopefully, certainly this has been Zelensky's intent, that it's going to further signal that these illusory red lines, as he put it, are just that Putin doesn't actually have real red lines here, that Ukraine can launch an operation like this and Russia's still not going to escalate it any further. So those concerns as it relates to allowing strikes deeper into Russian territory, escalation concerns really shouldn't factor into that. So we'll see how things unfold. Obviously, the restrictions are still in place right now, but this is Ukraine's latest effort. And I posit that if these restrictions are not removed, then Ukraine might decide once again that they're just going to go ahead and start using the weapons anyway, and sort of call the bluff, so to speak, and dare the United States to take any sort of retribution against them, because Ukraine obviously can't afford to, or just won't be able to win the war if they have to continue fighting with one arm tied behind their back. So I think that they're getting more comfortable with the idea that they might just have to go ahead and ask for forgiveness, as I say, rather than ask for permission, which they've been making those requests without much success for the past 2.5 years.
Yeah, and I'll definitely say, I've known you for a couple of years now, Colby. I mean, it's sad that I've known you for a couple of years in the sense that means the war's been going on that long. But I'm glad to know you, of course. But you've been remarkably consistent on this issue. I mean, like I think the best way I could put it is like, you've been talking about this since way before it was cool, and now it's become a major issue. And I think you've been putting a totally fair amount of pressure on the administration. And I don't know, I think a lot of people criticize you as just someone who poops on Biden all day. And I don't think that's true. I think that you're pretty specific about the issue, and it's this, and there should be more permission given for Ukraine to strike targets in Russia. I think that's pretty obvious at this point. And that basically, I don't know, we can get into that later. I think I'll try to, I think there's a few great discussions that, a few great points that the article raises that are basically like discussions that I've seen people have. And I think they're just kind of worth bringing up. So I think kind of the first chunk, right, is setting the stage. You kind of set the stage and you say, let's think back to what was going on when this started, right? It's been largely fought on Russia's terms. I remember kind of during a moment like Konstantin, who's a colleague of, a bunch of people, he runs Liberty Ukraine Foundation. They're great. He said, like, it's like a boxing match where we can't punch back, right? Like that was kind of the feeling, I would say, especially in the very early phases. And, you kind of set the stage with that. And then you kind of mentioned like this kind of narrative that was evolving that like Ukraine's getting slowly ground down, right? Like Russia is losing a lot of people. They are losing a lot of material, but like sad as that is, they have it to lose. And, eventually like Ukraine's going to have to say uncle or something. That was kind of the kind of doomer narrative that was like slowly, like until Ukraine does something cool, that seems to be where the media starts resting, right? And so I think you kind of set that stage and you say that's the context where this happens. I think we could agree that like this because of the success of this, it's resulted in a major kind of shift in that narrative, right? I think that's kind of evident. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, or I can move to the next part.
Well, I would just say that the point that Ukraine is being ground down, like this is not a narrative. This is just like a fact that Ukraine will not win a war of attrition against Russia. Like this has been evident since day one. Russia is a much larger country than Ukraine in size and in population, in economic strength. So Ukraine was never going to win a war of attrition against Russia unless they're inflicting vastly more casualties on the Russians than they are themselves receiving. And Ukraine is certainly killing an awful lot of Russians, but a lot of Ukrainians are dying as well. And so that ratio is definitely not such that Ukraine is capable of winning a war of attrition, especially since an awful lot of Ukraine's population is no longer residing in Ukraine. So it's actually gotten a lot worse than it was just with a paper comparison at the outset of the war. If you look at populations, Ukraine's population has shrunk considerably, and it's not all like women and children that left either. So Ukraine is not going to win a war of attrition. So if Ukraine's going to win, we have to conceive of how they are going to do that. So they either need to be inflicting vastly more casualties on the Russians than they are receiving, or there needs to be some sort of, some decisive wins that really force the Russians to come to the negotiating table, and Ukraine is in a position of strength. And I would say that, the opportunities to have that sort of victory condition are kind of gone. And maybe, Ukraine's able to get back to that. And I would say that this operation is definitely their attempt to try and reset the stage where Ukraine is in a more favorable negotiating position to end the war on their terms. But as far as like sort of a knockout blow, like with every passing day, that gets less likely because it just the attrition that both sides suffer gets worse. So it's time has been of the essence since the beginning, and there just is no sense of urgency really on the part of most countries supporting Ukraine, with few exceptions. Obviously, the Baltics and Poland, they get it. The United Kingdom gets it pretty much, I would say. But everybody else, there's really no sense of urgency in supporting Ukraine. And of course, the latest development in this is that there are, administration officials that have told the Ukrainians that, from their perspective, they are still interested in resetting relations with Russia. And this is one of the other reasons why President Biden does not want to allow Ukraine to conduct these deep strikes on Russian territory, is because they feel that would be an impediment to their ability to reset relations with Russia at some point down the road. And that just further demonstrates, on top of everything that's already happened, I mean, this is already very obvious to anybody who's been paying attention, that just makes it even more clear that there really is there's no understanding of the stakes here. There's no urgency in supporting Ukraine.
Yeah, so I mean, I would tend to agree, and I think that it's I don't know. I think do you have anything you want to say about this particular issue, Maurice, or
No. I think Kobe summarized it very well.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I agree. So I think that the next kind of section or next topic is, I think, as you said, you're kind of rightly a bit agnostic about, let's say, the like immediate military implications, or this you distinguish between strategic and grand strategic, I think, in the article, right? So I think that's what we're talking about here. We're going to try to be kind of agnostic on the strategic implications of it. I kind of agree that, as you said, probably better left to people like Andrew and who are actually monitoring what's going on. So, you know, but I think you... Yeah,
and just to explain this better for people who maybe aren't familiar with this, in terms of the definition. So, one of the strategic implications of this operation is the question of, to what extent is Russia forced to redeploy forces from other sections of the front to Kursk to deal with this operation, right? So that's a strategic implication, and this is very much still an open question. There's a lot of people, obviously, like Andrew and others, who are doing good work in trying to track, like, okay, which Russian units have been deployed opposite Ukraine with this attack in Kursk, and where do they come from, right? So that's a strategic implication. That's still an open question. Tactics, tactical and operational level, that's all the stuff that's happening on the actual battlefield. Like, what are the positions? What ground is Ukraine taking? What's the next move? That's tactical and operational. The focus of this article is grand strategic, right? So that's political, at the political level, at the grand strategy behind the whole war. So that's the theme that I'm kind of exploring, is what are the implications at that level, because that's actually what we understand the most about, actually, because Zelensky has spoken openly about what their objectives are, and we have a fair bit of information around that. So that's what I'm talking about, because all the other stuff, it's still all in progress. So it's, in my view, it's harder to make too many definitive conclusions about the operation, because all of that is still unfolding. But we can already make some we can see based on the evidence in front of us what's happening here at the political level.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I mean, like, I definitely see a lot. I'm certainly not a military expert. I see a lot of noise about people debating, let's say, like on the internet, whether or not, given Ukraine's strategic, again, not grand strategic, but strategic situation, this was like a wise move. But I think, as Colby said, if we just isolate that for a minute and talk about grand strategy and the bigger picture, I think that's where we can understand this better, or at least talk about it in a more objective way. And yeah, I tend to agree that. So I think that's the next kind of section, right? Is like this question of like the Overton window, red lines, all of that, right? So I think that's really, I don't know, it's a pretty basic concept that we've been hearing since the beginning. I remember when it was like, if we take away Russia's credit cards, they're going to use a nuclear weapon, right? It's like we can't unplug them from the SWIFT system. That would cause nuclear Armageddon. And pretty much we've seen that line move and move and move and move. And I think it's pretty, we can't send them tanks. We can't send this. I mean, it's exhausting how many red lines there were, honestly. And the people who say the red lines exist are the same people who said the last ones exist and the ones before that. And they just seem to have no shame or memory of the red lines. So yeah, I don't know. It does seem like a situation where this has resulted in forcing people to rethink where the red lines are, and also, I think, in maybe other grand strategy terms, I think that there probably are implications for like Russia in terms of their situation. I don't know if we can speculate too much on that, but I'll just say it doesn't look great for Russia to have Ukraine in their borders like this. I think they'll probably tolerate it. I'm not suggesting it would like result in Putin being overthrown, but it's not good. It's not a good situation. I'll leave it at that. So yeah, anything you want to say about this kind of question of like grand strategy or strategic initiative or whatever we want to call it?
I actually want to pick up on just what you said about it being exhausting, because that this is exactly the right right way to frame it, I think, or at least it's definitely how I feel. It is absolutely exhausting that we have to have this same battle over and over and over again, because as you correctly point out, literally everything that has been done to date, every one of these little incremental movements that we've made to providing Ukraine a tiny bit more help, all of it has been framed as just far too risky, far too escalatory, couldn't be done. And then once it's done, we find out that Russia does nothing in response. And yet we're still having these same exact fights over and over again. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting for everybody that is trying to get it through to the administration in the United States and in Germany as well, Chancellor Scholz, and all the other people that are just terrified that nuclear war is around the corner. It's very exhausting, and I really wish that I didn't have to spend so much time trying to hold people accountable for this insanity. I'd rather not have to do that, but it has to be done, because this fallacious thinking continues, and all the gaslighting and just all the excuses. They continue to make these bogus arguments, and so somebody's got to keep knocking them down. But it is exhausting, I mean, I am obviously very much a critic of the Biden administration, but again, I wish I didn't have to spend so much time, making the case. Like, it'd be great if they just said, yeah, we're going to just help Ukraine win, and actually did that. But they don't. Like, as we've seen, there's an excuse for every single thing. We can't give tanks, we can't give HIMARS, we can't give ATACMS, we can't give this, can't give that. It's all too risky and escalatory, until they finally relent, and then it turns out that Russia does nothing. So hopefully they're going to wake up one day and realize that oh, maybe there's not actually this massive risk of nukes flying after all. But we're not there yet. So until that happens, myself and others are going to still have to keep making the case, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's pretty much, I think, like the main topics in the article. I think you kind of conclude with, I think a sort of, I would say you're a pretty astute observer of whether or not people agree with kind of your just like opinions about like what, the Biden administration should do. You understand the mechanics of Washington pretty well. And I think that you're correct to say that Zelensky's, as you say in the article, Zelensky's holding more cards than commonly understood. The restriction on weapons is unpopular in Congress, or increasingly, you say, but I would just say in general, it always has been, really, but maybe even increasingly. And the perpetually risk-averse Biden may soon view being at odds with his own party as a major liability. Like, that's true. I think that there's a real good chance that we could see like significant pressure like cause him to change his opinion on this. So yeah, I think like here's hoping, right? Is there anything else you want to say about this before we move to the next segment?
Nope. I think that summarizes it pretty good.
Yeah, so I think, definitely check out The Insider, everyone. It's got lots of great authors like Michael Weiss, Christo Grozev, and Colby. So it's always great to have Colby on to talk about the articles. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and move to Q&A. I guess real quick, just like if you guys, I really didn't have enough time to follow this story significantly, but I guess I'll put it this way, just like real quick summary. I don't know a lot about the Telegram guy or Telegram. It's a kind of a foreign world to me. Andrew is some kind of Telegram wizard. I live among people who are very Telegram literate. I'm not. So it's hard for me to really talk about this, but I hear what people are talking about. And my general sense is that there's a concern. Well, let's put it this way: the guy who runs Telegram got arrested in France. There is concern now on like the OSINT side, the people like doing investigations on Telegram, that because the Russians are afraid that now the whole thing's going to be run by spooks, that they're going to delete all their stuff. And so I think there's kind of a fear that we need to go, not we, but like people, the internet needs to go collectively capture all this stuff before it gets erased from the internet. So I think there's kind of a scramble in the OSINT community right now to like make sure all these Telegram channels get archived. I think that's kind of going on behind the scenes. And then, yeah, that's pretty much. You guys have anything you want to say about like what's going on with Telegram?
Not really. I'm not really using Telegram besides like following like 100 channels or something like this for my work, and updating my channel, of course, also. But apart from that, no, I'm not at all. What did you say? A Telegram wizard?
Telegram, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's Andrew like achieved it once to like get a notification from Telegram, like you can't read any more messages or something like this. I didn't even know this restriction existed, so you probably now see how deep he is into the world of Telegram.
Yeah, those boys. I mean, they've got to go through thousands and thousands of posts every day. So
Yeah, it's crazy.
I don't know how they do it. Although I sort of know, but it's crazy. Anyway, moving on. Colby, anything you want to say about Telegram before we move on?
No, I really do not use Telegram at all. I take a look at a couple channels once in a while, but I don't use it at all. Like I don't have like an emulator at all. I've never downloaded the app because it's kind of a security risk. So the Telegram wizards have their ways of safely monitoring all the channels they do, and I don't do any of that. So I don't have anything to say other than yes, it's obvious that theoretically, if it were to like be shut down, or the Russians really feared that it would be shut down or compromised in some way, if they stopped posting on it, that would be a major loss of intelligence, and it would impact the Ukrainians as well, because the Ukrainians use Telegram heavily themselves, obviously, too. So there's pretty significant implications here for the war. But beyond that, I don't have any specific insights really to offer about the topic.
Yeah, I guess like the last thing I'll say about it is it's good in the sense that like Russia doesn't like they don't have an alternative. Like a lot of military intelligence passes through they request airstrikes on Telegram when nothing else works. You know what I mean? Like, so not having that at hand is kind of a good thing. If Russia has to invent their own indigenous solution, it's going to take some time and it's not going to work very well. And Ukraine's probably going to get in there pretty easy. So I don't know, like it could be a good thing, but probably, I'll put it this way, for the OSINT community specifically that is trying to investigate a specific war crime, right? Like the guy who presented last week, like that's an issue, right? So clearly they want to get all that stuff, hoovered up in the old archive machine and get that going. So anyways, next topic was U.S. investigation. So our good friend, I shouldn't say our good friend, I say that completely sarcastically, a noted Russian propagandist, an awful person, and person who did other things, Scott Ritter, had a burger with this is real. He had a burger with presidential candidate at the time, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and he went home and he had been raided by the FBI. And from that emerged that the FBI basically made an announcement. I think the U.S. Justice Department made an announcement that basically said, we're looking into anyone who's directly affiliated with Russian media. And we got our ears up because the election's coming and we think you're going to mess around with it. So time to close all the people we've been watching this whole time. We're going to close the traps now. And the time has come. So I think there's a bit of a panic there among like those circles, but anything, I assume Maurice, you probably don't have much to say about it unless you want to,
No.
but Colby, is there anything you want to say about this before we move on?
No, I have nothing to say other than just laughing, I guess.
Yeah. good, good luck to the investigators. I hope they uncover a bunch of Russian propagandists, because there are a bunch of them in the United States. They take money and they spread a bunch of garbage. So I wish them success in their endeavors. Okay, so I guess we'll now move to Q&A. So if anyone in chat has any questions, let us know. You can write them in chat. We'll do our best to answer. First question was, has anyone seen any impact from F-16s? Oh man, I know I've heard some stories about how they've been used, but I couldn't point to any specifics right now. Does anyone have any?
No. I just not related to the battlefield, but I heard a story yet. There was this one very famous Ukrainian pilot who died in a training exercise, when I recall correctly. And apparently they promised his mother that she could fly in an F-16 when the F-16 is there, because he always wanted to, and he was like very famous in Ukraine apparently. And I saw footage of the mother actually flying an F-16 now, so they actually fulfilled their promise, which I found very sweet thing to do. But probably not your question, sorry.
Nice. That's a nice story, though. I wish we had like B-roll or footage to play over that. So I mean, I think that I know there was some speculation right when they arrived, like John was like looking at the pods and like identifying the pods. It seems like they're mostly used for like electronic, like radar reconnaissance stuff, and also like air defense stuff, and especially against drones and other things. But I couldn't really point to specifics, so maybe I should just stop talking.
I've just heard that they're flying defensive counter-air missions, which is what John and I have been saying. I haven't seen any good evidence to suggest that there was anything surprising happening with them so far. So
saw a very convincing decoy this week. Good news there. They've gotten some real nice decoys. It would make sense to me. I'm certainly not a pilot or something, but or Air Force expert, but they're probably getting their sea legs, right? They're getting guys in the air, they're getting the flight hours, they're getting the mechanics used to the routines. It's going to take a little while before they do anything spicy with them, would be my guess. I imagine too, there's probably, Washington's probably got their eye over their shoulder, and we'll see. And so they're being real careful with them, right? And for good reason, right? I mean, obviously they don't want to lose an aircraft, I think we'll see probably some conservative use for a while, but we've seen Ukraine before start to figure stuff out.
Sorry for interrupting. There was a question from Wubi, like very early in the show. For the Q&A, only an hour ago, Ukraine made an official statement to Belarus because of additional troops and Wagner PMC on the border. What's your take?
Wow. So I guess my take is, I literally, during the news report, there was an announcement from Ukraine that they hadn't detected any activity. So this is very new. It's a change in Ukraine's previous statements. Belarus did announce like 3 weeks ago or something. They were like, the border's getting crazy, we're sending troops, something like that. And everyone was like, okay, whatever. Like drones started crashing in Belarus and they freaked out. I think that was kind of what was going on. And like Lukashenko had to look like he was doing something. That seemed to be what was going on. But yeah, as far as I understand, Ukraine has consistently reported since then that they haven't observed any like result from Lukashenko's announcement. So this would be a change in that situation. As far as Wagner, all I read is a report that their numbers, again, I couldn't include the stuff in the news report. It was just too much information this week. Also, like, I usually don't include a news report when the news report is nothing has happened, right? Like Belarus hasn't said anything. But that Wagner has reduced its number significantly. Like, I think that's probably obvious to everyone, but I think it's like the UK Defense Ministry noted that they're down like 80 or 90%. So I don't know if Wagner's a super significant like fighting force on the border. of Belarus. I don't like. I'll put it this way. I'm definitely going down a rabbit hole here, but the Prigozhin thing that happened, man, it's going down a rabbit hole if I start there. It's said by everyone, as far as I understand, the accounts that came out afterward, Lukashenko sincerely mediated that whole thing. He managed to call Prigozhin and sincerely told him, listen to me, this is a bad idea. You're going to start a civil war in Russia. It's going to be bad for everyone. It's going to suck. I'll take care of you. I'll take care of this, blah, blah, blah. And like Prigozhin accepted it. And, it happened the way it did. And he blew up in a plane. So like, I don't know if that deal still holds. I don't know how active Wagner is in Belarus. Andrew might be able to say something. I don't know if we need a Belarus watcher, to be honest with you. That would be really nice. But yeah, I don't know enough about the situation. But my general impression of Wagner as an organization is they're really not like significant anymore. They're getting their butts handed to them in Africa by Ukrainian special forces chilling with Tuaregs. And they're getting their, they got basically liquidated in Russia, like as an organization. They got mostly absorbed into other groups and kind of, tossed around. And yeah, I don't know. They're probably not. I don't think they've like gotten their act together and assembled in Belarus to invade Ukraine. That would be a pretty big change as far as the reports I've heard. But anyone have any like thoughts on that?
Well, I just had a quick look. Actually, I read a story like while you and Kobe were talking earlier, and apparently a German article here says that currently about 20,000 soldiers are at the border, and already last week Lukashenko draw some jets and air defense crews and additional equipment to the border. So yeah, I'm purely speculating, so don't take my word too seriously. Officially, disclaimer here. But maybe he's trying to, put some extra pressure on Ukraine so they draw out of Russia because they need to reinforce the northern border because of, just mostly just border guards holding it or whatever. I'm like I said, I'm just speculating. I seriously doubt that he would like invade Ukraine with his own army, because it's going so well for Russia, for the past years, and Russia has far more capabilities than Belarus has. But yeah, pure speculation. So don't take my word too seriously.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you, though. I think I have to imagine that after Kursk, Lukashenko got a phone call from Putin, and it was something to the effect of what you said. You need to cause a big stir on the border and make them do what they did to me, something like that, right? And Lukashenko is like, I'm not invading, but I'll make as much noise as I can. That's my take too. I'd certainly like we'll definitely eat our words if Belarus invades Ukraine. But
sorry,
oh no problem. You're okay.
That was my
but yeah, like that's kind of my general impression too, is that it's probably about that. But yeah.
I think that's thanks. I think that's probably right. I mean, my first reaction was that if Belarusian forces actually try to reopen the northern front against Ukraine, that would cause them some short-term headaches, but ultimately would be an absolute disaster for both Lukashenko and Putin. So I don't think it's going to happen. I've never believed that it was particularly likely. I think it's probably right that he's just deploying some forces in the hope that it might cause a reaction from the Ukrainian side and cause them to redeploy some of their own forces. But the border with Belarus is one of the places where Ukraine has actually been pretty diligent in fortifying, and it's already very naturally fortified as well. So the prospects for a Belarusian incursion are not great. I wrote a thread about this a year and a half ago. So people can find that on my feed. I relinked it. So you can go read it. And everything I wrote then that long ago is still pretty operable in my view. I think it would be really, really bad if they did this. It would cause a lot of turmoil in Belarusian society because this war is not perceived the same way among a lot of Belarusians as it is in Russia. Belarusian people are much more against Lukashenko than the average Russian is against Putin. It's quite a stark difference. So ultimately, I think it would really be a massive headache for both of them if Lukashenko really actually mobilized his military, and he would have to do that if he actually wanted to have any prospects of success in diverting Ukrainian forces. It would not be a minor thing. They'd have to do a general mobilization to fill up their units, and it'd be obvious and noticeable if they were doing that and preparing to actually attack Ukraine. So it doesn't seem like we're at that point right now. It looks like they're just trying to bring some attention to themselves. But maybe we'll all eat our words on this, but I'd be shocked if they actually went through with it, and ultimately it would work in Ukraine's favor quite significantly, I think, if they took that step. Backfire.
Yeah, Brendan mentions, I think I've read this too, that like Belarus has around 60,000 military personnel. So as Colby said, they would need to like mobilize and like, do a bunch of stuff, and that would be visible from space, literally. That would cause a lot of turmoil in Belarusian society, as Colby also said. And just all around, it seems unlikely. I remember Andrew telling a story that like, and this is true, that like they do send, the Russians are like, hey, give us the equipment, or give us like, you need to maintain vehicles for us, stuff like that, right? The Belarusians are helping, and like one of their jobs is just like the BMPs return with just bloody corpses, and they have to like drag all the corpses out and just hose them down and like send them back for the meat ways, right? Like, so you're asking those guys to go in? Probably not. Like, it just makes more sense from a logical standpoint to keep those guys in the back, right? That keeps Putin's plausible deniability. I'm sure at some point in his mind, Putin wanted Lukashenko to really put all his weight into this, but the ship is probably sailed on it. Anyway, I think our take is hot enough on that, right? The one last. Go ahead. Do you want to say something else?
No, I just wanted to say, we agree on it's just noise, or most likely just noise.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say is, because I mentioned like, I don't know a lot about Belarus, I would check out the Hagen Project. They're a good channel. I know they're on Twitter. I don't know what other platforms they're on, but they're like Belarusian like dissidents, basically, that kind of keep pretty good track of things in there. So that would be my one recommended source for like good information. Yeah. So any other questions, Maurice?
Yeah, there was a question from Thierry. Kind of long question. Question for Colby about F-16s. The Netherlands announced they will transfer F-16s AM to Ukraine. Those got the midlife update. Do these F-16s include AN, APG 68 radars because they got new avionics? And I just want to point out and mention that Terry wrote me an email lately where he asked me a similar question because he couldn't reach out to John, and John gave an answer to that. You can answer. I search for the email in the meanwhile.
Sure. No, they do not. The MOU brought the planes with mostly the avionics up to block 50, 52 standard, but that did not include upgrading the radar. So they still have the APG 66 radar. There, as far as we are aware, there's been no action taken to actually get the radars upgraded to a 68. 83 is firmly off the table. Biden administration is not willing to even entertain this. 68 would be theoretically possible, but I've seen no indication that anybody's been able to secure radar sets, much less organize that upgrade process, which is not, a simple swap things out in the field. Like, they would need to go to a proper facility to do that work, and facility space is kind of at a premium. The Greeks are having a lot of challenges with doing this kind of upgrade work, amongst other things, to their own fleet. So it's by no means just a simple, one day sort of thing, as far as I'm aware. So, they still have the garbage tier APG 66 radars, which is the main constraint that these aircraft have But even with a 68, that still would not, it's an improvement. But the Ukrainian Air Force is not going to be contesting the Russian Air Force at all, really. And air-to-air combat, it would go very poorly for them if they tried to do that. So, as I keep telling people, don't expect that is in the cards, because it just isn't, unless the Russians started doing really, really dumb things. If they are operating even semi-competently, they're just going to blow the Ukrainian Air Force out of the sky if they try and go up against them. They just have that much of a qualitative and quantitative advantage over the Ukrainian Air Force, even with F-16s. And they remember, there's only a very few F-16s that have been delivered so far, which is one of the reasons why you're not going to see them getting too ambitious with those. It's needlessly risky. You want to protect those assets and build up the size of your fleet so that you do have a little bit more options in how you can use them down the road. Right now, they have to be conservative.
Yeah, I think that was a good question. Also similar what John says, at least from the specs. And there was another question. Is police looking for the Gray Zone boys too? I think that was related to the Telegram story, right?
Yeah, well, no, it's more related to the U.S. people investigating people with ties to Russian, media and stuff. And yeah, they have explicit connections. I have to assume David Sachs is smart enough to have gotten enough Silicon Valley lawyers to insulate himself somehow. But maybe not. I mean, it's the feds coming after you. I don't know. I don't know. There might not be enough Silicon Valley lawyers in the world, but I have to assume some of the lower level guys, they've gotten caught with their hands in the cookie jar quite a few times. So I would be sweating if I was those guys. That's all I'd say about it. But yeah, I don't know what'll come of all this. I really hope that the U.S. starts taking just outright propagandists of foreign regimes, like the Syrian Nazi Party or something, more seriously. I think that those groups can be, we can throw the book at those people, especially anyone associated directly with Russian propaganda. So,
yeah. I'm not holding my breath on this. Gray Zone, Sputnik, Russia Today, these are all accredited media organizations by the U.S. State Department, which is something that I don't think a lot of people realize, but they are. So, I mean, step one would just be not treating them as legitimate news organizations, but the U.S. State Department actually does. Gray Zone is a legitimate news organization. Sputnik is a legitimate news organization. RT is a legitimate news organization. They are all given press passes to cover State Department briefings, and some of them have access to the White House as well. Probably the Pentagon as well. Yeah, the Pentagon as well, for sure. So the entire U.S. government treats them as legitimate news organizations. So, that'd be a good baby step, just to take their press passes away and say, yeah, actually, you guys are not legitimate news organizations. Whether they've broken any U.S. laws, that would be the next step. But we're 2.5 years into the war, and they still haven't even managed to do that. They still let these people show up to press conferences and ask their deranged questions. So that's pretty concerning.
Yeah, I genuinely hope we see a change in this, but as was said, it's they do. We've seen them in Washington asking their crazy questions. I want to say what's his name? I just know him as the Butter Goblin now. Michael Tracy. There we go. He was at some event recently. I saw him. So yeah, I don't know. It would be good if they just start going after some of the lower level people who are too dumb to insulate themselves properly, like Colby was saying. But yeah, probably wouldn't hold my breath for some of the bigger fish. Anyway, any other stuff before we wrap up?
Don't think so. I hope I don't miss anything in the chat, but I don't think so. So no, that's it.
Great. So yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. So yeah, I just want to thank, of course, everyone on the panel for participating today. It's a little bit of a light panel. We got some people on vacation. I think we got maybe a little bit of bigger production next week. So, but yeah, thanks to Germany to Ukraine. Thanks to Colby, always for being reliable and showing up for the stream. Thanks to chat. Always love you guys asking your questions. So yeah, feel free always in chat to ask questions. We're always happy to answer. We'll do our best. I can't promise we're the most insightful or anything, but I read the news a lot. Colby knows what he's talking about. And then I'd say in very specific subjects, Maurice knows definitely what he's talking about.
Yeah, at least when it comes to Germany.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's in the name. So as long as we stay in our lanes and I don't like let myself talk too much, we should probably be okay. Anyways, yeah. So thanks, chat, for hanging out and for all the future people who watch the video. Thanks as well. We broadcast at 2100 every week, Kyiv time, and yeah. So we'll see everyone next Sunday. Slava Ukraini.
Heroям slava.